Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In today's video, we're going to continue on with our Battlegroup boot camp. And in today's boot camp, we are going to talk about unit special rules. Okay, now before I get into unit special rules, there's a couple of things I want to say. One of them is what I have displayed on the screen is first edition rules or older rules that have been recently updated. And this tutorial this boot camp will actually go over the updated special rules. It's just that I had the first edition on PDF, so I was actually able to screen capture it to kind of let you kind of follow along with me. But there are additional unit special rules that are in the new edition of the rules. And secondly, I want to make an observation before we get started. Okay, so now in your army lists, you have different types of units like spotters or Bren teams or communications teams or engineers or whatever are in your army list. And when you look in your army list and you're trying to determine what those different units can do, there's a couple of different routes that Battlegroup could have taken. One route would have been to explain each unit in every army list so that, let's say you play the British Para and you've got a Bren team, you would be able to see the Bren team rules listed under the British Para army list. And then your neighbor who gets a late war British army list and they have Bren teams as well, when they look at their army list, they could see the rules for Bren teams on their army list. Now let's use engineers as an example. The Americans have engineers. And so my American infantry battle group might have an engineer team, and all the rules for engineers might be listed on my army list. And then the German player has an army list with engineers, and all the rules for engineers could be listed under his army list, etc., etc. But it is easier just to say this unit uses the engineer rules, or this unit uses the Bren team rules. So they would put a keyword on the army list saying Bren team or engineers or whatever the unit special rules are. And this kind of likens back to the days that I used to play L5R. I used to play a collectible card game, and the cards would have these keywords on them that let you know as a player what that card could do. It would have taken too much space to print all the rules on the card. So what they do is they put the rules in the rule book and they use a keyword on the card to reference those rules. And once you learn the game, you'd be able to tell, oh, that does this and this does that. Okay, that's fine. And I think that's what the Battlegroup team decided to do, was to use keywords to eliminate the need to write out all the rules in every army list. All right, so let's get started. Okay, first of all, I am going to be reading and referencing my new 2019 version of the rules, and if some of the wording or the order in which the keywords change, let's just try to adapt. Okay, many units and battle groups have their own special rules to reflect their role on the battlefield or how they fought at different periods of the war. These are all going to be detailed here. First change, additional armor. During the Normandy fighting, it became clear that the Sherman tank and other Allied armored fighting vehicles were under-armored to resist German anti-tank weaponry. Tank crews made various ad hoc attempts to increase their protection, using sandbags, spare track links, scrounged steel, and even concrete. And by 1945, the U.S. Army had instigated a scheme for workshop units to add protection to all of their vehicles, often using steel plate salvaged from captured German tanks. How effective this actually was is not known. Any vehicle with additional armor gains an extra level of armor protection on its front armor. Note, front only, against the high explosive anti-tank warheads of the German Panzerfaust and Panzerschreck. Additional armor has no effect against hits from other anti-tank shells. Obviously, it must have had some effect, but not enough to warrant a bump in armor rating. So it basically, the additional armor special rule gives you one letter improvement in your front. Armor in this game is denoted by a letter category, and the numbers are for penetration and the letters are for armor. So it gives you a letter bump, but again, only versus Panzerfaust and Panzerschreck, which are the heat rounds. And again, not all additional armor, not all U.S. vehicles have additional armor. I do believe you will have to spend additional points to get that special rule. All right, the next special rule is Air Spotter 3+. An air spotter unit is trained to direct the close support of aircraft. If a unit with the air spotter rule is on the table, then the chance of an aircraft arriving on the tabletop is increased from the standard 5+ to the score noted in brackets. In this case, would be 3+. Because you might have an air spotter 4+ or an air spotter 2+, but the default is air spotter 3+. Artillery spotter. Only a unit with the artillery spotter special rule can call in fire from artillery. They can use the request artillery fire order, which we went over in the artillery video. An artillery spotter automatically has the mortar spotter special rule. So remember, artillery spotters can do both. They can spot for artillery and spot for mortars. A forward observer with the artillery spotter plus special rule can re-roll the distance dice, either 1, 2, or 4d6. When rolling the distance of the scatter, note they do not re-roll the direction. Okay, the next one is assault troops. Some veteran or elite troops are often trained and equipped for combat at close quarters. They carry more submachine guns and hand grenades and are specially trained in hand-to-hand combat, and more importantly, have the resolve and courage to use it. When an infantry unit with the assault troops special rule is given the assault order, they automatically pass their experience test to launch the assault. Also, instead of rolling a d6 for their hand grenades, they roll 2d6 and use the highest score. So if you're familiar with D&D, they have advantage on their grenade roll. So you roll 2 dice, but you only take the best one. You don't add them together. Okay, auxiliary. Some rear echelon, reserve, or conscripted civilian units with little or no combat training were sent into battle, regardless. Predictably, they rarely performed well. Such units are rated as auxiliary. Whenever an auxiliary unit is given an order, roll a die. On a 1, the unit fails to do anything and is marked with a pin instead. A unit with the auxiliary special rule is always inexperienced, but they cannot be given the close assault order. They just aren't that brave. Okay, now there's a bunch of rules before the Bren teams. Behind enemy lines. Some specialist units operate ahead of the reconnaissance units, deep in enemy territory. Like me, I used to be a Pathfinder, mostly gathering intelligence and helping sow confusion. Like, what is it, Comp Group 150? Units with the behind enemy lines special rules can always be deployed after all other scout units are on the table and be placed anywhere on the tabletop, but not within 10 inches of an enemy unit. So you could put them behind them just as long as you're not within 10 inches of an enemy unit. That's pretty not awesome. I'm going to say mean. They may, if the player wishes, always start the game on ambush fire. So they just basically start behind you in ambush fire. That sucks. Okay. But so make sure you spread your guys out so there's no place on the table where there's that's more than 10 inches away from one of your troops. That's how you guard against that. Okay. Next one is bomb group or bomb group. In 1940, it was common for French platoons to gather all of their VB grenade launchers into a single unit for fire support. Before the game starts, a French player may elect to reorganize to create a bomb group for his platoons. All VB launchers in the platoon are detached from their squads and placed together in a new squad. Reduce the platoon's 3 shock groups by 1 man and the VB launcher each and create a new squad with 3 men and 3 VB launchers. Each VB launcher has a rate of fire of 2. Okay, I think this is a Polish word. Brawura. It's Brawura. Proud and brave, in 1939, Polish cavalry still attacked in the style of cavalry from the previous century. If a Polish cavalry unit close assaults an enemy infantry unit using their charge move, then they count as assault troops, as noted above. Also, if they fail a morale test due to ambush fire, they can re-roll the test. So they're brave. Remember, you only get 1 charge move per game. Okay, now, Bren teams. A British infantry section may detach its Bren team from the main body of the squad to operate independently. Remember, this is a may detach. You do not have to detach. Usually to give suppressing fire support to the rest of its section. This can be done at any time in the game, or they can be deployed separately. That would be any time. When a British section is given an order, simply declare that the Bren team is being detached. It now becomes a separate unit of 3 men with the Bren gun. The rest of the section will now complete the order while the Bren team remains in place and does nothing. Basically, they're just left behind. From now on, the Bren team acts as a separate unit, so they must be given their own order, can become pinned, take their own morale test, and the British player must take a battle counter if the Bren team is destroyed. Once detached, the Bren team does not benefit from any of its parent unit's special rules, and they cannot rejoin their original squad during the game, and a squad may only detach 1 Bren team. Bridging. A bridging unit can build bridges, usually the engineering order. Each engineering order allows up to 2.5 inches of bridge to be placed. Light bridging units can cover a maximum of 5 inches, so basically 2 orders. Heavy bridging units can cover up to 5 inches per truck in the unit. See engineering for full rules. Yeah, bridging a bridge on the map, on the table, in the middle of a game, that's ballsy. But sometimes you got to do that if the bridge blows up or if there's no bridge, etc. Etc. Okay, here's a new one. Command Chaos. Now, this one is pretty long, so I'm going to try to be eloquent. With poor communications and inexperienced officers, command and control within an army can sometimes be a shambles. Of course, some units operating on their own initiative or with better officers and staff or more radios managed to perform okay, but others quickly fell apart in the face of the enemy. To recreate the confusion and chaos on the tabletop, any such battle group will have no units with the any such battle group will have no units with the officer or senior officer special rule. Of course, the army itself would have officers. It is just that they aren't very effective or can't get their orders through quickly enough to their subordinates. So basically, you'll have officers on the table. They just won't have the officer or senior officer special rule. For those battle groups, instead of adding the number of officers to the orders dice, add the following instead. There's 3 levels of the game. You got the squad, platoon, company, and battalion. And it goes, if it's a squad game, you just add 1. If it's a platoon level game, you add a D3. If it's a company level game, you add a D6. And if it's a battalion level game, you add 2d6. That's pretty good. I mean, you could technically get 12 orders extra in a battalion game. That just means your army is operating on their own initiative. The total is the number of orders available as usual, with no senior officer, no rerolls are allowed. For French battle groups in 1940, the Command Chaos special rule is only used when they are the attacker or playing in a meeting engagement. This is Command Chaos attack only. The normal rules apply when they are defending. So I guess their officers actually function in the defense. Okay, the next one is communications. A communications unit has powerful radio or field telephone equipment to help keep the parts of the battle group talking to each other and to hire commanders further in the rear. A unit with the communications special rule can reroll single failed communications checks each turn. Like there could be, like your FO might also have the spotter rule, but he also might have the communications rule, which means he can make a communications check, but then if he fails, he can re-roll it. Communication breakdown. With radios, at least working ones, in short supply, communications with off-table units is difficult. Some battle groups suffer from communications breakdown. Communication checks, usually the default is 3 or better, require a 4 or better roll instead, unless otherwise stated. Wire teams are not affected by this rule and still remain a 2+ roll. Communications tests can still be re-rolled by units with the communications special rule. Disguise. Again, Conf Group 150. Okay, these units are usually some disguised vehicles and troops to try to get through the lines and sow confusion in the rear. A unit with the disguise special rule cannot be fired at by any enemy unit. They think it's their own unit after all, unless they roll a 6. The check is made before rolling any other dice for shooting, even the spotting. If a 6 is rolled, any firing then resolved as normal. If a 6 is not rolled, then the open fire order is wasted. So basically, you still have to issue them the order to fire. Then you roll the die. If you don't get a 6, then you move on to the next order. If you do get a 6, then you resolve it as normal. Like you still have to make your spotting check, and then you have to make your fire into hit. The requirement to roll is 6 is lost if the disguised unit opens fire at an enemy unit. No, that's not correct. The requirement of 6 is lost if the disguised unit opens fire at an enemy unit of the disguised unit. So I guess that would be your friendly unit. After which it is treated as an enemy unit as normal. Open fire does not include using the engineer or mortar spotter special rules. So what that's saying is, if you have a disguised FO and he calls for fire, you don't know that he's calling for fire. So you don't automatically spot him as the enemy. That's pretty cool. Dispatch. If radios and telephones won't work, send a messenger. A unit with the dispatch special rule automatically passes the communications check because they have gone in person. Remove the unit from play once they have been used. It costs 1 order to send a dispatch. Next one is duplex drive. Allied tanks driven by the duplex drive, or DD, are amphibious and, as such, can cross water features. A tank with the DD special rule can move D6 inches per move in water, treating the water as dangerous terrain. If the DD tank rolls a 1, it would therefore only move 1 inch. It is in danger of being swamped. Roll another D6. On a 1 or a 2, the tank is swamped, sinks, and is destroyed. On a 3 through 6, it ships some water but struggles on 1 inch. That's dangerous. Okay. Elite. Veteran units only. Okay, some exceptional veteran units can be upgraded to the elite status. The very best of the best. An elite rated unit can always re-roll its morale check and also has a superior chance to pass any infantry assault order test or beyond the call of duty test. Engineers. Units with the engineer special rule may attempt demolitions and mine clearing missions by using the engineering order. Remember our second video where we talked about orders? There are a lot of rules before we get to loader team. Here we go. or fight, damn you. For the Red Army, the presence of an NKVD political officer bolsters the morale of the troops, or instills fear. If a Russian battle group includes an NKVD officer, then, before the start of the game, roll a d6 and add the result to the battle group's battle rating. Okay, so that gives you an opportunity to remove pins later, forcing them forward without suffering a loss to your battle rating because you added it at the start of the game. Fire superiority. U.S. infantry were equipped with the M1 Garand, a fine semi-automatic rifle, and by 1945 had begun to adopt their infantry training and tactics to utilize the weapon's higher rate of fire to better suppress enemy positions and overwhelm targets with a weight of fire. A U.S. infantry squad equipped with the M1 Garand treats all suppressing fire as one band higher than its actual rate of fire. So a unit with a rate of fire of 3 would use the 5 to 9 band when resolving suppressive fire. A unit with a rate of fire of 5 would use the band 10 plus when resolving suppressive fire. That represents the squad's extra firepower and their willingness to just shoot the place up. Fire superiority has no effect on aimed fire. HVSS. Horizontal volume suspension springs were developed for the U.S. Army's Sherman tanks and began to replace the tank's original suspension system in 1945. The new system provided better stability over rough ground and was far easier to maintain. An American tank with HVSS increased its cross-country and road movement by 1 inch. This will already be included in the data profile. So no need to do anything, it's already built in. Infiltration. Along the front, enemy infantry units have been infiltrating through the lines, and rumors of already being outflanked or surrounded are spreading confusion and panic amongst its troops. At the start of the game, the opposing side must take a battle counter because his men are now windy or scared. Also, a single reconnaissance support foot patrol may start the game with the behind enemy lines special rule. So if your battle group has the ability infiltration, then you can take one of your reconnaissance foot patrols and put them behind enemy lines. So when designing your army, you keep that under consideration. Last one before loader, jet fighter. We all know what that is. The first jet fighters were even harder to hit with ground AA fire than propeller aircraft. If a jet fighter comes under AA suppressing fire and is hit, then the controlling player can request that the attacker re-roll their dice. The second result stands. Basically, you can make them re-roll if you're a jet. All right, loader team. Deployed guns and mortars can sometimes have a loader team attached to them. This 3-man team counts as additional crew and as part of the unit for targeting purposes, as well as acting as an extra source of crewmen to replace losses. The loader team allows the gun to reload and fire more rapidly because they are extra hands hauling the ammo. A gun or mortar with a loader team that is given an open fire order may attempt to fire 3 shots instead of the usual 2. On a roll of 5 or better, it can fire the extra shot. Note, the gun must have the open fire order to use this special rule. Otherwise, it cannot be attempted. So you can't use a move and fire and then get that extra shot. you have to be sitting still using open fire. And if you've got the loader team with you, which is an extra 3 crew, you can roll a 5+ to get that third shot. Low and slow. Coming in low, slow, and level, some early war aircraft were almost sitting ducks. All enemy anti-aircraft fire may re-roll its suppressing fire to hit dice when targeting a low and slow aircraft. We haven't got into the aircraft rules, but that'll come into play. Luftwaffe air superiority. When did that ever happen? Okay. At the outbreak of hostilities, the Luftwaffe were better prepared for the air war and, with surprise on their side, managed to dominate the skies over many battlefields. On drawing an air attack battle rating counter, all enemy battle groups must roll a 6 for an aircraft to arrive rather than the normal 5. A medic within 5 inches of a friendly unit can attempt to prevent a single casualty per turn. Roll a d6. On a result of a 5 or better, one model is not removed. If successful, the medic is immediately moved to within 1 inch of the effect. The next one is Mine Dog. Mine Dog. As an interim anti-tank measure, the Red Army trained dogs with anti-tank mines harnessed to them to run under German tanks. Predictably, they were not very effective and resulted in a standing order for German soldiers to shoot dogs. At close assault range, 5 inches, an anti-tank mine dog may attack a German vehicle by using the infantry assault order. Then rolling a d6 for each dog can only be used once. Mine dog attack table. Damn you, Shepsky. That's a 1. 1. Damn you, Shepsky. The dog scores a hit against the rear armor of the closest Russian armored vehicle within 10 inches of the dog. 2 through 4. Casualty. The dog is killed. Remove it from play. 5. Hit. The dog scores a hit against the vehicle's side armor with an armor penetration value of 4. Critical hit. Number 6. Critical hit. The dog scores a hit against the rear armor with an armor penetration value of 4. Mortar Spotter. Only unit with the Mortar Spotter special rule can call in fire from mortars, usually medium or heavy. They can use the request artillery fire order to do this. But just remember, they cannot call in guns, they can only call in mortars. Motorcycle troops. German Kradschuten's troops and other nations' motorcycle-borne infantry were not supposed to fight from their transports. The motorcycle was an effective way of rapidly getting into position before fighting. And whilst, of course, it is possible to fire a rifle or machine gun from a moving sidecar, it is very unlikely to hit much and is not the way motorcycle troops generally operated. I mean, this isn't Indiana Jones. Motorcycle troops that fire while still mounted can only use suppressing fire up to 10 inches, and their rate of fire is halved because the other guy's not loading, he's driving the motorcycle. A unit mounted on motorcycles cannot be given an aimed fire order. Before the troops on motorcycles can use aimed fire or suppressing fire with their full range and rate of fire, they must dismount using the disembark order as described in the movement rules, in the issuing order rules. Once dismounted, they act as normal infantry. Motorcycle troops can re-embark back onto their motorcycles using the embark order as normal. In this way, a motorcycle is treated as any other transport vehicle. A destroyed motorcycle does not result in taking a battle rating counter, like a truck would. multiple hits. With some multiple rocket launchers, a single salvo will likely score multiple hits. Roll twice for penetration with this weapon and choose which result to use. Not one step back. Russian NKVD blocking detachments are in place to stop any retreat. Any infantry unit that takes a morale test with 30 inches of such a unit, and which the blocking detachment has line of sight to, and which would surrender or rout, may re-roll the test by removing a single man from the squad. So kill a guy, like the NKVD guy shoots a guy in the head, and then they get a chance to re-roll their morale. Harsh. Okay. Officer. Each officer unit in a battle group adds 1 to their order dice total. So the more officers, the better coordinated and more effective the battle group will be. Keep track of how many officers in a battle group has. Even a pinned officer still adds 1. He can still use his radio. Officers who are removed from play can no longer offer their +1 bonus. It's difficult to command you when they're dead. 1-man turret. Some older tanks were designed to take only a single crewman in the turret as a tank commander, loader, and gunner. This had a serious effect on the tank's effectiveness. With no commander dedicated to finding targets or giving and responding to instructions, because he was also busy operating the gun, a vehicle with 1-man turret special rule suffers a -1 penalty when rolling to spot an enemy for aimed fire. Panzer Ace. The Panzer Aces are the very best tank crews. A Panzer Ace is always elite and gains +1 to hit when using aimed fire with high explosives and armor-piercing shells. Panzer Marsch. The Germans' battle groups' panzers are urgently pressed on, bypassing strong enemy resistance and using their speed to retain the initiative and keep the enemy reacting to them. Once per game, at the start of the German turn, a German commander may declare Panzermarsch to get his units into battle faster. The German commander can roll an extra d6 for the number of units, as detailed by the scenario, which arrive on his turn from reserve. These can be any units freely chosen from the Germans' battle group, which are positioned and then given orders as... It doesn't give you additional troops, it just lets you bring on more than what the scenario is allowing. Radio Communications Network. Some battle groups possessed more and better radios to coordinate their movements and attacks. This meant command and communications were generally better throughout their units. Any unit with the Radio Communications Network special rule allows a senior officer to use his orders reroll every turn of the game, not just once per game. Wow, that's powerful. Radio Link Vehicle. The U.S. Army's communications far exceeded those of other nations, and their widespread radio network, along with the amount of flexible artillery support they could call upon, often meant that many guns could respond to requests from their artillery forward observers. A radio link vehicle can attempt to repeat any off-table artillery, not mortar barrage. After any artillery barrage, off-table, requested, timed, etc., has been completed, roll a d6. If the radio link vehicle rolls a 6, Then the barrage is immediately repeated, aimed at the same target point. Start from fire effect all over again. So basically, you just get double fire, using the same size and number of guns as the previous barrage. It does not cost any orders to fire these extra guns. Counter battery fire missions can be used against this extra barrage. Once the radio link vehicle has successfully called in an extra barrage, it cannot be used again in that game. So it's a one-time use dealio. Okay, recovery. A recovery unit can now tow a destroyed or damaged vehicle to safety and back to the rear workshops. See the engineer section for full details on this. I could see that being useful in a campaign game if you need to recycle your vehicles or repair them. Restricted West. With Germany's military resources badly overstretched in 1945, they prioritized the defense of the Eastern Front over that facing the Western Allies. Because of this, the Russians still had to face many more German armored units than the British or Americans. Locally organized tank-led counterattacks continued in the East until the end of the war. But by the last months of the war, few combat-ready armored vehicles were being encountered in the West, and virtually no armor counterattacks would be mounted. To better represent this, in 1945, some German tank units are rated as Restricted West. This is the same as the standard restricted rule, except it only applies if the battle group will be facing an American or British battle group. It does not apply when facing a Russian battle group. Resupply. A resupply unit can resupply a vehicle or infantry unit or gun that has run out of ammunition by using the rearm order. Yeah, tanks have like a limited amount of ammunition. So if it runs out, you have a resupply unit. You can replenish their ammo. Rounds on the way. Early in the war, an effect of the lack of good communications and the longer response times of off-table mortar and artillery batteries is that once a fire mission has been requested, it cannot be canceled, regardless of other factors. Where the spotter round lands, a mortar or artillery spotter unit cannot cancel a fire mission. This means that the orders required to fire the guns must be spent, and the mortar or artillery fire may then hit your own side. All timed barrages and airstrikes must also go ahead as planned. They cannot be canceled. Runners. Early in the war, lacking radios in the front line, runners were used to carry messages. A platoon headquarters with the runner special rule may, when given an order, remove a single model. The platoon headquarters then counts as having the mortar spotter special rule for the rest of the turn only. The following communication test will be rolled on a 2+. This test cannot be re-rolled. You have to kill a guy to do that? Okay. Russian bed spring armor. By 1945, faced by an increase in the availability and use of Panzerfausts and Panzerschrecks, the Russians developed standoff armor. This armor was made by burning mattresses and welding the remaining metal mesh to the sides and tops of tanks, working on a similar principle to German Schürzen. This standoff mesh would detonate a high explosive anti-tank warhead before it hit the actual armor and dissipate some of the force of the warhead, penetrating molten bolt. So like the when it hit the springs, it would detonate a shape charge, a focused charge, but it would only be hot molten metal spraying against the side of the tank, and not the shape charge actually pressed against the side of the tank, spraying it through the tank into the body. A Russian tank with bed spring armor reduces the penetration value of a Panzerfaust or Panzerschreck hit from the side or top by -1. Okay. Not the front. Scout. Reconnaissance units have the Scout special rule. This confers a number of bonuses. Often a scenario will have special deployment rules for Scout units. Also, when rolling for the first turn, both battle groups will add their number of Scouts to the die roll. In addition, before the battle, both battle group Scouts have been hard at work tracking the enemy's movements and might have already been briefly engaged by enemy, or more likely the enemy's own Scouts. The side that has the most Scouts has won this pre-battle engagement and has out-scouted the enemy. Their opponent must take 1 battle counter in the first turn because he has lost the reconnaissance skirmish. Scout units, being the eyes and ears of the battle group, gain a +1 modifier to the die roll when attempting to observe enemy units during aimed fire. A unit with the Scout 2 special rule is a superior Scout, usually an aircraft that counts as 2 Scouts rather than just 1. All the other rules still apply. It counts as 2 Scouts when trying to determine who's out-scouted who. Senior officer. Ranking higher than the other officers, this is a more senior commander. He counts as an officer, also adds 1 to his order dice, but in addition, he may once per game re-roll 1 of the order dice. If a unit with the senior officer special rule is on the tabletop when you are rolling for a number of units to arrive from reserves, as detailed by the scenario, then you may re-roll this die, because the senior commander will be making it his highest priority to get the following units into position around him. Senior officers also have their own special order which only they can use. If a senior officer is given the tactical coordination order, he can take no other actions in the turn. He takes a battle counter, but may then attempt to remove a pinning marker from a single friendly unit, which can then be given an order as normal. That's expensive in my opinion. 6-pound APDS ammo. In battles set in 1945, a British 6-pound anti-tank gun can fire a single shot of new APDS, armor-piercing discarding sabot. Looks like once per game. It wasn't that widely available. A hit from this ammo increases the 6-pounder's AP penetration value by 3, and the ammunition also affected the weapon's accuracy. Because the sabot detached gave this shell a tendency to fly high, the APDS shot has a -1 to hit when used for aimed fire with anti-tank shells. -1 to hit, +3 armor-piercing value, you get to use once. Ski troops. This special rule is only usable if playing games in winter conditions or on the lake. Ski troops in other conditions count as normal infantry because they aren't wearing their skis. See the winter rules, which we haven't gotten. Sniper Scout. Sniper Scout. Snipers are highly trained specialists. They operate alone or in small teams. A sniper does not have to be removed if he is the last man and pinned. Also, any aimed fire by a sniper counts as the target being in the open. He waits for the best shot. A sniper can also choose the model he removes, be it the man carrying the special weapon or the officer. No battle counter is taken for the loss of a sniper scout unit. They also count as a scout. Because they are adept at camouflage and hiding, spotting a unit with the sniper scout special rule incurs an additional -1. Stall, stall, stall. During attacks, standing orders for Russian tank crews were to close with the enemy rapidly, fire on the move, and attempt to engage the enemy tanks at point-blank range. The tanks carried out their orders with reckless bravery in headlong charges, while suffering heavy losses to the enemy's guns. Some Russian tanks may use the stall, stall, stall rule, as noted in the Army list. Instead of ordering each vehicle individually as normal, the Russian player may choose to use a special order, declare stall, 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 and can then use D6 tanks instead of just one. Roll the D6 each time stall is declared. It can be used multiple times in a turn, but individual vehicles can only benefit once per turn. Each tank ordered using the stall, stall, stall special rule must then take 2 normal moves, which must be towards the enemy unit or their opponent's table edge, and can then take a single suppressing fire shot with high explosive or small arms. The first move must be at least the maximum distance for a tank off-road. The second move can be from 1 inch up to the vehicle's maximum. So you can't go stall, stall, stall and only move like 2 inches. You have to move your vehicle's full move and then an additional 1 up to its full move. So no stalling. Note, stall, stall, stall rule does not apply to some Russian heavy tanks, assault guns, or any dug-in tank. They must be given an order using the normal rules. Time on target barrages, or TOT. An artillery practice developed by the American Army to bring extra available guns into a bombardment and have the first rounds all land at the same time, giving the enemy less warning and therefore less chance to find cover. It proved highly effective and become much feared by the Germans. Let me explain time on target a little bit. If I've got a gun that's only 1 mile away and I've got another gun that is 2 miles away, what they would do is they would figure out how much time it took the shell to travel from each gun to get to the target. They would fire the farthest gun, the 2-mile gun, and they would wait the difference in time. It's usually just a few seconds, but they would wait that time, and then they would fire the second gun, the closest gun, so both shells would travel side by side, parallel. And then when they landed, it was one big explosion. Well, in 2 different locations, most likely, because artillery is not that precise. But imagine you being that German soldier standing in the open field, and then one shell lands. You would know that you're under an artillery barrage and dive for cover. And then when the second shell lands, nobody would be injured because everybody would be in a ditch. But on time on target, all the shells would hit the field at the same time. Nobody has a chance to dive for cover. Casualties would be excessive. Hopefully that explained that. Okay, time on target barrages can be purchased from the additional fire support section in the American Army list, but they do not count as additional fire support choice. Any U.S. artillery, but not mortars, can be declared as time on target, including timed barrages. Resolve them as normal. When rolling for artillery barrage accuracy, Any result of 1, which would normally miss, can be re-rolled with the second roll standing. So I guess that helps with deviation, because a miss is 4d6, right? No, it's miss, pin, and hit. So you can re-roll a miss. You might get a pin or a hit. Okay, much better. Okay, T-34 mobility. One of the T-34's many assets was its good suspension system and its low ground pressure due to its wide tracks, allowing it greater mobility than the other tanks of its size and weight. When rolling for cross difficult terrain and obstacles, a T-34 can re-roll the D6 if it wishes. The Russian player may always take the lower of the 2 dice rolls. So like, usually it's a number of inches that reduce your movement. So if you roll dice and you roll a 6 and you don't like it, you can re-roll and maybe you'll get a 1. Okay, unique. Unique. The unit is rare, and a battle group cannot have more than one of a unique unit, regardless of the size of the game being played. You can be playing with a battalion size game, but if you've got a unique tank on the table, then you can only have one of them, or a unique unit or something, and that's detailed in your army lists. Unreliable. A vehicle that has the unreliable special rule is prone to mechanical problems. If the opposing battle group commander draws a value 1 battle counter, then he may play it on any unreliable enemy vehicle. The 1 counter is now treated as a breakdown counter instead. Roll on the breakdown table as normal. Okay, so I get penalized. I have to draw a battle counter, but I draw a 1, which is actually pretty good for me, but I don't even have to use it. I can just play it on you, the enemy, if you have an unreliable vehicle. Okay. Ura Ura. Russian infantry still used human wave tactics, attacking en masse, and as a result suffered horrendous casualties. Such it was to be a Red Army rifleman. A Russian rifle platoon may use the Ura Ura special rule. Instead of giving orders to each squad individually, activate the platoon command squad and declare Ura. Any infantry unit with a model within 5 inches of the command unit may now be given the top speed order without using any further orders. These units must take the double moves towards the enemy unit or their opponent's table edge. Ura Ura rule may be used to move support teams such as machine guns and light mortars, or they may remain in place and be given orders individually as normal. Okay, so that just allows you to play one order and move all your guys together. If you're going to double time everybody anyway, use the Ura Ura rule, and it won't hurt you. But if you were thinking about doing a little fire maneuver, don't use that. Vehicle repair. These are the battlefield mechanics and recovery teams, and they may attempt to repair an immobilized or destroyed vehicle. See the engineer rules for this. We haven't gotten really into the engineering. We talked about it during giving orders. War weary. With the war obviously coming to a close by 1945, many Western Allied troops had been in the line too long and had seen too many comrades in arms become casualties. They were no longer willing to risk being killed or wounded, despite what the orders might be. Some veteran British or American infantry units have a chance to being war weary. Before the start of the game, roll a d6 for each veteran platoon or squad. On a 3 or better, they're okay. On a 1 or a 2, they have simply had enough and are unlikely to risk themselves too much. A war-weary unit will only pass a unit experience test on a roll of a 6. This lasts the entire game. Wire communications. Far more reliable than radios, wire communications mean that field telephones can be used. They are not completely reliable, as cables are often cut by flying shrapnel, but a unit with wire communications mean any communications test is passed on a 2 or better, regardless of what is actually required. Once the roll is passed, remove the wire communications unit from play. Its job is finished. Now, it's not destroyed, so you don't take a battle counter. All right, those were the new and updated unit special rules and battle group special rules from the new book. Again, the PDF that you're seeing on the screen is the old rules, and they're out of date. So I'd recommend picking up a new copy of the rules. And yeah, so this is the Battle Group Boot Camp. And in the next boot camp, we're going to jump into aircraft. That's right, we're going to talk about bombing and rockets and strafing. And then the rule after that is anti-aircraft fire. And then the rules after that is engineering, which we were talking about before. And then that would be the end of the Battle Group Boot Camp basic training. We'll go into advanced training in the future videos where we talk about Army lists, scenarios, special situations like winter fighting or street fighting, things like that. But night fighting, those are all advanced rules. All right, guys, I will see you in the next boot camp.